chronology, so let's write it down, is simply the when of history. That's all it is. It's when things happened. We don't have to worry too much about the detail of scientific argument which is involved in dating things. But I think we have to understand that there are two types of when. We call them absolute dating and relative dating. The difference is very simple. There are no absolute dates for the time before Christ. When Christ was born, we invented a new system of dating. We call it Anno Domini, AD. And so we know, for instance, that we're in the year 2004 today, and a year ago, or a little less than a year ago, your president came to England and visited Elizabeth II in 2003. But let's say, for argument's sake, that Jesus had never been born. Let's say they were still, if you like, in the BC period. We were still dating the way the ancients dated, before the birth of Christ. That date wouldn't exist, would it? Because that's 2003 years since the birth of Christ. Actually, that's wrong, of course, because you all know that Christ was born in 6 BC. However, that date would not exist. And if we were still dating the way that the pharaohs dated, or the Israelite kings dated, we wouldn't have an absolute date, we'd have a relative date. So, for instance, it was year 53 of Queen Elizabeth II when your president was in his year 3 that he came to England. Those are relative dates. That's an absolute date. BC dates are worked out by scholars. They don't exist. We don't know 1279 BC is the first year of King Ramesses II, the year he was crowned. That's worked out by scholars. The Egyptians didn't refer to it as 1279 BC because they didn't know Christ was going to get born, did they? So we use relative dating for the ancient world, and we try to apply absolute dating to it by using all the evidence to hand to try and build up a dating system, what we call a chronology, a BC chronology. But that is about how we do it. So, for instance, in the 5th year of King Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, King Shishak of Egypt came and plundered the Temple of Solomon. There is no date in the Bible for that. It's year 5 of Rehoboam. It doesn't say 925 BC in the Bible, does it? But that's the date we've worked out for that event. And that's the key to understanding and interpreting biblical archaeology. Because what we do is we look for evidence in the Holy Land and in Syria and Jordan and in Egypt for inscriptions with kings' dates on them, and we try and compare them to other kings in different parts and try and make dates out of this type of thing, where one queen is visited by another king in a date like that, and we try and make comparisons and draw up a chronology based on that. So, as long as you don't worry too much about this word and you just think about the when, and we're going to try and do some absolute dating superimposed upon relative dating. Now, another word I think we should try and understand is history. What's history? It's not the past. The past is what happened. History is our best guess at what happened. As historians, we try to interpret the archaeological data and create a history. So, for instance, if you were to read a book that was written in 1850, an Egyptological tome of some sort, and you read a modern book on ancient Egypt, they would be very different books. Because a modern historian would write a different version of history to a Victorian historian. Not only because we think differently now, but also because we have a lot more evidence to hand than we had 150 years ago, 100 years ago. We have new discoveries that are being made constantly in Egypt and in the Holy Land, which enlighten us upon what happened in the ancient world. 100 years ago, that material was not available. So it's very important that when we look at this sort of subject area, that we keep up to date with the literature and the archaeological reports. Things are happening all the time. The House of David, for instance, was found for the first time only a few years ago in Tel Dan. The name, the House of David, appears on an inscription. For the very first time, we've been searching for evidence of the Bible for over 200 years, and only recently do we find the House of David turning up out of the ground. So expect new discoveries to change the way we think about things as we go through the years. So history is what we're going to construct today from the remnants that the past has left us. And we're going to try and apply that evidence to the Bible story itself.